What's going on, guys? Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be answering your questions. Some of you guys, I don't think understand what questions you should be asking professional athletes, but hey, I'm going to answer the ones I can. Honestly, it's never been about the opponent for me. That has very little to do with it. I think of this as like a very selfish journey, honestly. It's like, this is my journey, and then there just also happens to be somebody across the octagon for me that is necessary, like a necessary part of what needs to happen, but I don't really care about who I'm fighting. Now, as far as like a dream matchup, it wouldn't be an opponent that I'm focused on, but obviously like a circumstance. I would love to be a main event in Canada, and I'd love to fight for the UFC welterweight title, especially in Canada. How to beat Charles Radke is a little bit of a late question. I'd say obviously with a left hook at this point, now that we're on the other side of it. Yeah, I felt great about the matchup. The guy was really good, really tough, and honestly, you know, sometimes fights don't go exactly how you think they're gonna go. In many ways, that went exactly how I thought it was gonna go. You know, I could have seen some other things happening throughout the fight, but man, everything that I visualized landed the way that I wanted it to land, and like, you know, that was, you know, about as perfect as you can draw a fight up. Not a lot went through my head in the fight, which is where you want to be. I felt very present. There were a few quick thoughts, but man, I felt almost like, it's super weird, almost like a meditative state. Like I felt really present and just focused and in the moment, and that's kind of the best case scenario. Like that's what you want to aim for, and the more of these fights that I have, the more calm and present I feel. Like my debut against Mickey Gall versus that are completely different experiences. You know, they talk about those UFC debut jitters. Those are real, man. Like I felt the moment for the debut, and I've had some other moments in fights where it just felt very different. That one just, I felt like I feel now. I was just in the moment. I was just addressing what was in front of me, and yeah, I felt like I almost saw the fight in slow motion. The other thing that I felt or thought in the fight was between the first and second round. I remember going back to my stool and wasn't even, you know, remotely tired. I felt fresh, I felt warmed up, and I'm like, okay, we had a slow first round, pretty slow first round. We're just kind of feeling each other out. You know, felt like I won the round or edged it out, and then we'll get, you know, I guess we're probably gonna really pick the fight up in the next couple rounds. Asked my coach, I'm like, I won that round, right? Like sometimes it's hard to tell because, like I said, I'm in the moment. I'm not factoring everything in at the same time. They're like, oh yeah, you definitely won that round. I go back and watch the fight. I'm like, oh, that was like a legitimate fight of a first round. It was not as slow as I thought it was, which is pretty cool to think. Like that's the opposite. You feel like less happened than what actually did happen. That was a pretty cool realization after the fight. Partake in THC? Not really, man. Not really my jam. Yeah, not really. As far as being a fan of this sport and like having watched guys since I was a kid, obviously George St. Pierre is the first one that comes to mind. There have been a ton of guys that I've looked up to throughout my career and drawn inspiration from. I've always had an interest in the guys that are specialists, like the Damian Maias and guys like that can do one style extremely well in MMA, and not that they don't have well-rounded skills, but they just stick to their one discipline or their one sport and do it really well. I've always loved that. And then the other people that I draw inspiration from more so now in my career are my training partners, the guys that I'm around all the time. I see these guys working super hard. I see them having success, or I see them putting in a ton of work, and you know, a guy coming up short and then being back in the gym on Monday and being like, yeah man, like that's part of life. We're in here training and getting better, and we're not letting the outcome of a fight change us in one way or another. And that's something that I've really taken a lot of inspiration from. And especially going into my last fight, I'm like, look man, I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of the work that I put in. I know who I am. I know the outcome of a fight isn't gonna change who I am, which is one of the reasons I didn't, you know, rub the win in my opponent's face. It's like, look man, you talked a lot of trash before. That's who you are. I'm the guy that doesn't talk a lot of trash. I won. The win's not gonna change who I am. And had it gone the other way, that wouldn't have changed who I am. I'd still be offering to shake a hand. I'm still like holding my head high. I am who I am. I put this work in. I know what I bring to the table. But I also felt really sharp. I felt dialed in. I felt like it wasn't the best training camp, that's for sure. I had a lot of adversity this training camp. There was some miserable times where realistically the last 10 weeks of the camp, I trained for about 5 of them. There were 3 straight weeks where I did not train at all because I couldn't through illness and I had an infection. So like those, I couldn't train at all. And then I had an injury about 2.5 weeks out from the fight, maybe. And the training for the last 2.5 weeks was what would normally basically be my warm-up. So I couldn't do the things that I wanted to do. And I'm like, look, I can either try and push through and I will make this worse and it's going to affect me more in the fight, or I can just trust that I know how to fight and that I've been doing this for 20 years, and that the preparation that I was able to do was sufficient, you know, like, look, I feel good. I know I can win this fight. I know my weapons are sharp, and I just have to trust it, which almost is like tougher to do. You especially when you get close, you're like, I just want to go hard. I want to feel those like hard rounds, man. I want to wrestle. I want to spar. I want to get into it and almost get those nerves out a little bit. It's almost tougher to just kind of touch the line of trying hard and have to pull back because you're like, look, my body's just not ready to go any harder than this, and I'd rather go into the fight healthy than overdo it now and be less prepared for the fight. Feel free to film content at Mellowfloat. Sounds good. I'll film some stuff at Mellowfloat. Mellowfloat always helps me out before my fight. Thanks, Steph. Jeff versus Mike in different sports. Yes, we're in different sports. I don't know what to say about this. Yeah, he's a sick hockey player and the kid can scrap on ice. I don't know what you want out of this question, but I'll give you something. Jeff versus Mike on skates in a hockey fight, I don't like my odds. I tied up with my brother on a couple weekends ago. We just did the old like grab each other and move each other with, you know, I'm like, let me feel what it feels like to be in front of you with like a hockey fight. We just grab each other's sweaters and absolutely ruined a pair of sweaters for each other. But I'm like, on land, this is difficult. On ice, I'm a decent skater, but I don't skate consistently. He's a way better skater than I am, and obviously a way better hockey player. I'm like, okay, put us on skates. I don't like my odds. I gotta be honest here. The kid probably pieces me up on the ice. Do you believe in the moon landing? No, not really, honestly. That was like the first conspiracy I ever heard of. I was in like first year university. My buddy brought up like a hour documentary on the moon landing, and I was like 17 and impressionable. And I was just like, oh, that didn't happen. And that's just got in me too early, man. Full on, don't believe it happened. The beer. Hot tub stream. I don't know what that means. This sounds like something that would be more of an OnlyFans post. I don't know what. That's not a question. Hot tub stream. I don't know what to say. Do you miss training in Nova Scotia? You showed me how to block a punch, Mr. Smile. I miss Nova Scotia big time, man. I love Nova Scotia. When I lived in Halifax, I thought for sure that was the last place I was ever gonna live. I'm like, this is where I'm spending the rest of my life. I love Nova Scotia. Miss a ton of people out there. Miss the summers. You know, miss in some ways being dumb in 17, 18, 19 and going out to bars and sneaking into bars when I was underage and going to drink out in Halifax and just hang out and be a dumbass. And now I'm a full adult who's a dumbass, and I don't have to sneak into bars. I can get in there because I'm of age, and I can just be a dumbass on my own. Who was your favorite teacher at Waterdown High? I didn't go to Waterdown High. I don't know any of the teachers from that school, so none of them. I don't know any of you. I didn't go there. Who gets smoked? Who's getting smoked next? Hopefully somebody with a number by their name, man. I want that number next. That's what I want next, man. I want a number by a name. Again, opponents don't matter to me. This is my selfish journey, and for me, I want a number by my name. I want to be ranked. I deserve it. Favorite province? Well, obviously I live in Ontario, so I'm gonna go with Ontario, but I love Nova Scotia. I lived out there for 5 years and however long it took me to finish that last online course. But yeah, man, I love Nova Scotia. super sick province. But yeah, I grew up in Ontario. Southern Ontario is my home. Love it here, man. So I started training, I think right before I turned 14. I started at a family martial arts gym, Brown's Martial Arts in Waterdown. I was doing like Taekwondo and stuff, and then they started adding in like a grappling practice. We had a very limited intro to jiu-jitsu just based on what we knew. We were in a very different time when I started training, like what was 20 years ago. If you knew a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt, that was like incredible. When I started training in Halifax 4 years later, I think there were only 2 black belts in Nova Scotia, and they were my 2 coaches, Peter Martell and Kevin Taylor. So at the time, we started training a bit of jiu-jitsu, and we had Phil, I can't remember Phil's last name, but he was a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, and he's a black belt in judo, and he was our instructor. So like a blue belt, granted, you know, he had a lot of grappling experiences, but like anything he was showing me, I was like, this is incredible, man. And then, you know, the owner of the gym had basically like a BJ Penn textbook, and then I had a 10th Planet textbook, and we just kind of, once we no longer had the blue belt instructor, we'd kind of just go through the books and figure things out on our own. But when did I start training more MMA? Because that was only, I did Taekwondo a couple times a week, and then we had like 1 MMA practice a week. So it was like MMA or kickboxing. So we did that once a week, and I loved that. And then I started for like the second half of high school just doing the MMA practices. They ended up being twice a week. So I do like 1 day of striking, 1 day of grappling, and then I hit the bag and play other sports like rugby and hockey and stuff. But I really started training hard MMA like pretty much full time, like a lot of training. Right after I graduated high school, I went to Iron Tiger Muay Thai and was there like every night for several hours after work. Just all I did all summer was wake up, start work at 7. I just did manual labor, worked from 7 to 5, would drive down the street to the gym, start training at 5:30, leave the gym at like 8:30 or 9, go home, wolf some food down, go home, go to bed, rinse and repeat. And I felt like the luckiest guy in the world. Like it was super grueling physically, but I felt so lucky that I'm like, man, just after work I get to go and get the crap kicked out of me by all these Muay Thai killers and professional fighters. Like, this is so cool, man. This is what I've always wanted to do. Yes, I could hear the fuck Radke chants in the octagon, and yeah, I was obviously again still like dialed in, but it gave me a little smirk. Like, you brought this on yourself, bud. Favorite strike? I mean, at this point, it's got to be the left hook. It keeps working for me in the UFC, but that before these strikes had landed, I never would have said left hook. Would have said that would have been down the list, but that's the one that keeps working for me. So I guess it's the left hook. No, it's not true. I'll fight CM Punk. Yeah, I don't think he's doing MMA anymore. He's wrestling. Tried his hand at MMA. Lots of respect to him, dude. I mean, the guy got in there and really trained and really fought and was like, no, I'm going to go in the UFC and really try this. That's pretty badass, man. Lots of respect to the guy, because I've been doing this for 20 years and it's still like, holy crap, I can't believe I'm doing this. This guy did it for like a year and a half and went in and fought Mickey Gall and had like actual fights in the UFC. So lots of respect to the guy. But he did interview me after my CFFC fight, my comeback fight, after just shy of 4 years away from the sport, competing in MMA. And yeah, so that was kind of cool. The interview ran longer than the fight, so that was cool. Favorite sub? That one is easy. Rear naked choke. Best submission there is. Just because it's the cleanest submission for me. You can catch somebody in a guillotine, you can catch somebody in a heel hook or a straight ankle lock. But if you rear naked choke somebody, odds are you did several things way better than the person that you're fighting, and you're the one who's in control. So rear naked choke all day, my favorite submission. Strength conditioning routine. So I prioritize strength conditioning outside of camp, especially the strength side of it. I'm not trying to get strong in camp. If you're not strong already a month out from a fight, I don't think there's a lot you're gonna do in a month that's gonna get you stronger for the fight without taking away those gains that you could get, or taking away the other things that you could do to prepare for a fight, right? Like, outside of the fight is the time, in my opinion, to build your potential. And when you're getting ready for a fight, you reach that potential. That's how I like to think of it. Or you build your tools or your weapons outside of camp, and then in camp you're just sharpening those tools, right? So if you're getting ready for a fight, trying to learn brand new things or add big elements to your game, or trying to increase your deadlift, I'm like, look man, this probably isn't the time to do this. You're a month out from a fight. You have the tools that you have, just get really good at using them and recognize which ones are the ones that you need for this fight. So the arm triangle against Johan Lines, I set up with a lot of shoulder pressure. So I wound up in half guard, so my leg was trapped, and I think I just kind of ducked my head and ended up in the arm triangle type position, like his head and arm in one position, or on one side of my head and in kind of the arm triangle. I gave him a lot of shoulder pressure there and just kind of kept driving my weight forward and up into his neck. I'll be perfectly honest, I didn't even think I was gonna get that submission. It was just something I was using for a secondary purpose, but I just took my time with it. And sometimes those slow chokes catch up to guys where they're like, okay, this guy's not squeezing. I didn't even have my hands connected until the very end. Like I had my hands open, and I think just that slow choke built up slow enough to, by the time he recognized he was in trouble, then I connected my hands. He gave me one bridge, which the direction he bridged, you'd have to bridge in super far for it to work, especially with where our hips and legs were. It was probably the wrong thing for him to have tried at that time. And it was basically like, I think it was just tight enough and had given him enough shoulder pressure to where he had enough time for one attempt to escape, and just, he's like, let me just try this, and if it doesn't, it's only gonna make it worse, which it did. It got significantly tighter. When I got the tap, my hands actually weren't locked. I was switching my grip to something else because I was gonna make a little adjustment, but I kept the shoulder pressure the whole time, so I wasn't even really squeezing, to be honest. It was just like body weight. But if you've ever been stuck in a deep arm triangle before, if the arm triangle's on correctly, body weight is plenty. Like that will put you out. So I got my black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the gi. I trained in gi pretty consistently up to black belt. I trained a lot in the gi at white belt, blue belt, and purple belt. I had my purple belt for the longest, I had my purple belt for the longest of any belt in Jiu-Jitsu. When I was a purple belt, I got my purple belt in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and then I moved back home to Ontario for maybe 6 to 8 months, and then from there I moved down to California. So there was like maybe a year or two where I was in Halifax, another 6 to 8 months in Ontario, and then I moved down to California. So I was a purple belt for like 6 years or something like that. It was a long time, but I didn't have anyone that I was necessarily under. I was just training at Alpha Male. So I didn't train in the gi a ton for those couple of years. Felipe Braggio, my jiu-jitsu coach, he gave me my black belt. I met him in Sacramento, California. He still has a gym there and now has a gym in Hawaii. We're Carlson Gracie black belts, Carlson Gracie lineage. When I met him, I started training with him in the gi again a little bit. I competed in the gi again at purple belt, just, that definitely wasn't my focus. I was still primarily focused on MMA and no-gi and wrestling, but just sprinkled everything in with, sprinkled some gi training in just to mix things up. It's definitely not my forte. Like, I rolled a bit at purple belt in the gi, got my brown belt, rolled a bit in the gi, and then got my black belt, and Felipe's the man. He's like, hey man, now that you're black belt, you're 28, you're black belt, you can do adults, IBJJF Worlds, you can go be a, try your hand at gi in these tournaments. I'm like, psych coach, I'm going back to MMA, like you're never gonna see me in a gi again. I put the gi on exclusively for like other friends getting black belts, or if I'm teaching at Felipe's gym or something like that and I'm back in Sacramento, I'll put the gi on. But I actually have not trained in the gi since I got my black belt, so exclusively no gi now. Once I'm done fighting MMA, I'm sure I'll throw it back on just as like a fun hobby. It's cool, and there's definitely a use for it. You can tighten things up and you can see things in a different light, because it changed a lot of the things in grappling. But I think especially for MMA, prioritize no-gi, prioritize wrestling. That's what wins fights. I mean, Jeff's trained. You know, he does some striking with me a little bit. I've held some mitts for him. He trains my striking coach a little bit. He's done a little bit of grappling, but he hasn't dove into MMA enough to like emulate a UFC fighter, right? Like, if that's something he wanted to do kind of after his hockey career, that'd be sweet. And I'd probably be retired by then. I'm 5 years older than him, so I'd love to be his head coach. But, you know, he's got to dive into it to really start emulating a UFC fighter.